Trey here. For the past 8 weeks, West Virginia Public Broadcasting and the Us and Them podcast have been collaborating with KCRW in Los Angeles on this series we call Red State, Blue State. It's a conversation between Trump country here in West Virginia and the liberal progressive blue bubble in Southern California. We'd been leading up to the midterm election, but now that that's behind us, we still got some things we'd like to talk about. Now, it's not news that political discourse in this country has become anything but civil. So, who do you blame for all of the negativity? If you're like 30% of Americans surveyed by NPR, you said the media. So, today on Red State, Blue State, we're talking about the press. And guess what? Journalists don't feel so secure about their standing in society either. Newsrooms have seen threats, suspicious packages, even shootings. And then there's the president.
They stoke the fires of resentment and chaos. They report phony news. They are truly an enemy of the people. The fake news, enemy of the people. They really are. They are so bad.
I'm Chery Glaser with KCRW in Santa Monica.
And I'm Trey Kay, host of the Us and Them podcast from West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
And that was President Trump at a recent rally in West Virginia where he used reporters as a punching bag. And Trey, you were right there in that media pit.
That's right, Chery. I was right there. My first time at being yelled at by the commander-in-chief. And it got me wondering how the good people of West Virginia who were there in the audience felt about treating reporters that way. So I met up with my high school friend Todd Runner. He distrusts the media, and he's cheered at Trump rallies.
As I look over to the media in the back stands, just watching the reactions. Some were smiling. You can tell some were happy. Some were smiling, laughing.
Now, I was in that media pen. And it's kind of a scary feeling to be there, and all of a sudden he points to the group of people and says, "Here they are, the enemy of the people." You see a lot of people turn and look at you, and I looked into their eyes, and I can honestly say it is kind of scary to have that turned on you like that.
And that's exactly what he's trying to do. He's trying to turn the spotlight back on you. How he expresses it and says it, if he said it, I think calmly, every once in a while, it wouldn't take the bite that it does. The people I saw in the crowd, they wouldn't let anything happen to those people. No, they would have stopped it.
But Trey, what exactly is the spotlight that Todd wants to put on the media, and why is he so distrustful, do you think?
Well, like a lot of people that I've spoken with in West Virginia, Todd thinks the vast majority of journalists are liberal, that they can't hide their bias, and that it results mostly in negative coverage for conservatives.
They shouldn't be there to root for one side. They should be there for truth and balance. I'm sure it's hard for anyone as a journalist that has strong opinions to do that. But to me, it's getting out of hand. And I've made a point to watch and listen to news from both sides, CBS, ABC, NBC, the main ones. And my own stats, the first 10, 12 minutes of every broadcast for 90% of the ones I saw were ditching the president, finding faults in him. They would try to find all the negatives. Some of them weren't facts, they were just opinions, and it would drive me crazy to sit there and watch it, knowing something good had happened that day or that week, and they would touch on that for 2 seconds.
Now, counting TV headlines is not exactly scientific.
No.
But I get Todd's point. So I called up a card-carrying member of the national media based here on the West Coast for a response.
I don't think Todd's going to like my answer, which is that I think Trump has done a lot of controversial things that have deserved a lot of the scrutiny that they've gotten.
That's Matt Pierce. He's a national reporter for the LA Times. And, I assumed he'd push back against this idea that most journalists are liberal, but he didn't really.
I think that's correct. I mean, if you look at just the demographics of who becomes a journalist these days, it's an industry that is very heavily populated by people with college degrees, sometimes with master's degrees. Just in general, we see in the demographics of the electorate, that those people tend to vote for like more liberal issues and more liberal politicians. And the media industry is increasingly becoming concentrated in these really big cities like New York, like Los Angeles, where it's made up of employees who often don't share the same kind of lifestyles as a lot of the people who they're writing about. And so I think that's actually a really fair criticism. You know, I would love to see more conservative people getting involved with traditional journalism, because I think that would create news and to create stories that is accessible to really the broadest range of the public. And news organizations could probably do a little bit more to reflect, you know, the way that America talks to itself.
I think that he and Todd would agree on that. But, you know, Chery, in talking with people in West Virginia, I get this sense that folks no longer really know a local reporter.
Well, I mean, there are fewer people doing it for a living.
I think this means that people don't see what goes into the reporting process. You know, talking to sources, confirming what you know on background, and how different all this is from pundits just yakking on television. In reality, I think we journalists are like cops or judges. And yes, we have our own opinions, sure. But we try to check them and put them into perspective and to tell a bigger story than just our own.
I asked Matt, our national reporter, how he would make the case to someone like Todd about that.
I want to be an advocate for the cause of this public service. You know, I view journalism as a public service, and it's this instrument of democracy where we're trying to provide information to people so that they can make the best decisions about what they need to do to improve their communities or the biggest problems that are facing them in their lives. And earning that credibility back is a project that's not going to take years, but possibly even decades. And it has to be done through the work itself and demonstrating through action rather than, you know, through promises that you and me and everyone can provide information to people that they can check and that they can poke and see if there's any holes in it and, you know, see if it's something that they can trust.
So like a lot of people, Matt is thinking about how to repair the media's bad reputation.
Right.
But I want to go back to where we started this conversation, Trey. You at that Trump rally with people booing at you. Reporters at places like the LA Times, they've had to take that kind of distrust and even animosity seriously.
You know, we have to have our mail screened just in case somebody decides to, you know, mail us poison. You know, we have security guards at our building. And, you know, very recently there was that mass shooting in Maryland at the Capitol Gazette newsroom. And it was a reader who had, you know, hated their work for many years. It wasn't really connected to Donald Trump at all, but it was connected to their journalism. They had written critically about him. You know, it's something that we're very vulnerable to. You know, we're public people. We're out in the public. We don't carry guns when we're knocking on people's doors, asking them for interviews. To a certain extent, our safety is highly dependent on the public's willingness to protect us.
That's exactly what I was trying to get at with my high school buddy Todd. I mean, how could he be willing to see a reporter be threatened?
And I got to tell you, Trey, demonizing journalists happens out here, too. One of my KCRW coworkers, Saul Gonzalez, he's interviewed lots of politicians over the years, both on the left and the right. But a couple weeks ago, he had an interview with longtime Orange County Congressman Dana Rohrabacher, and it was a first for Saul. Have a listen.
Public broadcasting has been so rotten, along with CNN and MSNBC. It's fake news and phony news.
So you don't like talking to me?
No, I don't.
You don't like it?
No, I don't.
Can I hang out with your campaign today?
No.
Can I go to the barbecue?
No.
I can't go.
No. We don't need enemy people there. You're an enemy.
Right.
And the bottom line is we don't need people who are trying to undermine us in order to support the billionaire Bolsheviks that are pouring money into here. We don't need those people to be around trying to find information to hurt us.
Wow. I mean, there you go. So how did the Trump playbook work for him in this past election?
Not so good, actually. It looks like for the first time in 30 years that Dana Rohrabacher is not going to be heading back to Congress. So maybe this whole media is the enemy thing isn't going to work for everybody, at least if your name isn't Trump.
Okay.
Good to talk with you, Trey.
And it's good talking to you, Chery. Looking forward to talking to you next week.
Yeah, we're going to talk turkey.
Or rather, politics at the family dinner table.
In difficult times, music gives us peace, brings us together, and helps heal us. It calms our nerves and brightens our days. That's why we're bringing you classic episodes of Mountain Stage on air and in our podcast. This is Larry Gross, host of Mountain Stage. Find something that's familiar or brand new and feel the power of live music on our website, mountainstage.org.
You've been listening to Red State, Blue State, a collaboration between Us and Them and KCRW in Santa Monica, California. Hey, we want to hear from you. Are you like Matt Pierce, who sees journalism as a public service that provides people with important information to help them make sound decisions in their lives? Or are you like my friend Todd Runner and believe that the vast majority of journalists are liberal, can't hide their bias, and mostly report negative information about conservatives? Would you let us know what you think? Go to wvpublic.org and search for Red State Blue State or kcrw.com/Red State Blue State. And thanks so much for listening.
Support for this podcast comes from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.